Hi guys, before you get into the next amazing conversation with another amazing guest, I just wanted to tell you I have now moved over to Substack. So it's the never settle podcast.substack.com. The reason I've done that is because of the increase in censorship I am finding on YouTube, and I'm worried that maybe one day they're going to deplatform me. So please head over to Substack and subscribe. I'm very new into it. It's growing. There will be a lot more content on there going forwards and hope to see you over there.
Which is impossible because all of the assets, and this is what Matrix Freedom members who come to my webinars realize, every single asset that we had was frozen in 2023. Everything. All the bank accounts, all the Ian Clifford stamp bank accounts, all the corporate accounts, everything. I woke up in the morning and we had no access to any bank account anywhere in the world. And yet we're still going. And all these people that paid prior to June 2023, you say, oh, well, I paid this money and Ian hasn't given me my remedy yet. Go and talk to the FCA because they froze your funds. And they're still here.
Hello. This is probably the most controversial podcast I've put up to date. And quite frankly, I have been gobsmacked at the shitty comments that have been put on various videos that I've shared as a way of creating awareness that this is coming up. Now, I'm not naive to know that Ian is like Marmite. I know there's a lot of bad press around Ian. I am also a Matrix Freedom member. I watched on the sidelines for a couple of years before I parted with some money about 18 months ago. And I did it after a lot of conversations, a lot of webinar watching, and I went with my gut. The other reason I did it was because back then I was lazy. I didn't have the capacity or the intelligence to know how to do this myself. And I was happy to pay somebody else who's got the knowledge to get me remedy. Because when you realize, as I'm sure a lot of you watching, when you realize how corrupt this system is and how we've been, quite frankly, fucked over from the time we were born, it gets you wanting to take action, right? So that was my choice. So I've got a personal vested interest in getting Ian on my podcast because I wanted to see the colour of his eyes and I wanted to see the cut of his jib. And I wanted to get a feel for myself in a one-to-one conversation to see how that would feel. So that's the main reason why I've had Ian on. I reached out to Matrix probably about a year ago. Didn't get very far. And then obviously more recently, Ian has decided he wants to do podcast interviews again. And so it gave me an opportunity to get him on. I've had people talk about I'm being paid for it. No, I'm not. I've had people talk about, oh, the webinars are out there where, that Mel will be promoting this, that, and the other. Well, the truth of it is, I am going to promote a webinar. I am going to put a link down below for anybody that wants to learn any more about what they can do, the Republic of Old Souls, getting out of the public system and into the private, being protected jurisdictionally, and how you can basically be a church envoy and diplomat and basically be left the fuck alone to go about your business and your life as you want to, which is what we are all dreaming of. Just leave us alone so we can get on with our own lives, right? This is not me promoting people to go and pay thousands and thousands of pounds of money. This is an opportunity for people to sit on a webinar that's being held by Ian, where he will answer questions personally. If people ain't interested, if you think I'm plugging a scammer, then just unsubscribe now and just stop watching. I'm promoting the opportunity to speak one-on-one with the man in question, tap into his knowledge and understand what he's trying to achieve. That's it, right? Do I believe Ian is a scammer? Well, I wouldn't be here if I did. Do I wholeheartedly believe that he might not be a scammer? Listen, when I took the decision to pay my money over 18 months ago, I always knew there was a risk. I knew that it could come to nothing. I've been down this path before with another person 15 odd years ago, and guess what? He got closed down by the FCA and the SRA. He was exposing the mortgage fraud, the finance fraud, and at the time he was labelled a scammer. And I bought into that. I've thought about that quite recently, and I think, was he? Or was he just a bit too close to exposing everything and he got shut down? And the same thing has happened for Ian. He had all of his accounts frozen in 2023, the same as this other guy did 15 years ago, which basically closed his business. Somehow Ian's been able to keep going. So I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just telling you where I'm at. I've paid some money. I still have faith and hope. And I'm showing you on the screen here now. I've actually got a credit on my transcript, which has come from the IRS. That was done on the 26th of June. Since then, the process is another form goes into the IRS before that fund gets released. But essentially, having that transcript means that that amount of money has come off the IRS's ledger. So they've now put that to one side, mine and many, many others, before obviously those funds then get released. So that's where I am in my particular journey. You can believe that or not believe that, I don't care. But what I've shown you is actually a screenshot from my platform. Could it be a load of bollocks? Yeah, it could be a load of bollocks. But that's where I'm at with things. I just wanted to make a couple of notes really, or observations. A lot of the crap that I've been getting over the last few days, comments wise, I think some people were genuine, saying, Mal, can't believe you're getting this guy on. I know what people think. Some people think of Ian. But there's been that the heart of it really has come from a certain man that most people are aware of that seems to be on a one-man crusade to bring down Ian. It's a bit like Trump derangement syndrome. That's how it comes across. And the reason why I don't particularly have any positive feelings towards that person is because everything I've seen from him is slating people. He slated all sorts of people that are out there trying to do good things in the movement. He is instrumental in bringing that court case against Ian. He didn't get all the charges got dropped, but Ian got done for contempt of court. My question to you is, if this particular person is so passionate about people not being scammed, why isn't he crowdfunding for all of the thousands and thousands of people that have been scammed by the banks? I'll mention Trevor Mealham here, who's been on his crusade against Lloyds Bank, but has also been helping others that have been in the same situation he has. That's massive. We're supposed to be here fighting against the establishment, not fighting against each other, right? So why isn't he helping all those other people that have been scammed by the massive banks? Why are there videos claiming that he's scamming people? Because I've seen those. And he is outwardly, I've never met the guy, I've never spoke to the guy, but he is outwardly attacked me on some Facebook thread, and then calling out for a debate with me. I'm a podcast host. I'm here to give a voice for people to speak what their story is, what they believe their truth is, what value they may be bringing into the world, how they might be able to help people. If it doesn't resonate for you in terms of this particular podcast, it doesn't resonate, but it will resonate for others. So I will leave it there. This video recording has gone on longer than I wanted to, but I just felt the need to state my position, really. If you think I'm showing my true colours, as somebody put on one of the comments, then please jog on. What you see is what you get. There is no agenda. I've given Ian a platform here, and I've invested in that platform with him. I'm not saying he's God Almighty. I'm not saying he's got the winning ticket. I'm not saying any of that. Everybody's big enough and old enough to make their own frigging mind up. And anybody that's paid their money and is bitching and moaning about it and can't be asked to come back and speak to somebody at Matrix and basically get that converted into something that's now working, then that's on you. And if that one man that's determined to bring Ian down succeeds, then those thousands of people that have paid their money will lose everything anyway. Great. Where does that get us? Well, hello, lovely listeners, and welcome viewers. Today, I have the wonderful Ian Clifford. Ian Clifford heads up Matrix Freedom, which I know some of you watching will be like, oh, I'm not sure about that bloke. But give him the benefit of the doubt. I've always had belief, and I'm a Matrix Freedom supporter myself. So for over 2 decades, Ian Clifford has endured relentless targeting by UK authorities for exposing systematic fraud, financial manipulation, and Crown misconduct. And I know Ian used to be very high up in the finance world a long time ago. And to get to the next level was offered the deal and decided not to take the deal, and has ended up with a much harder life ever since, which I'm sure he can go into. Your lawful activism through Matrix Freedom and the Republic of Old Souls, which some people won't have a clue what that's about, has led to unprecedented legal retaliation, which has culminated in a 12-month sentence, which has recently been issued to you without jurisdiction or lawful process. You weren't there. You didn't attend. I mean, that doesn't stop these fraudulent bastards anyway. I've been through that myself in my own experiences. But despite this, Ian now leads a landmark legal challenge at the International Criminal Court and the European Court of Human Rights. And your mission, Ian, is spiritual, peaceful, and liberating. You've got a documentary coming soon called The Disruptor. And you are back doing interviews now after quite a long break because you want to reveal the truth that the Crown doesn't want anybody to hear. And we've been having some technical problems up to this point, but welcome, Ian. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mel. I'm an admirer of your work, and anybody who sticks their neck out like you're doing, hats off to you, and hats off to everybody who's trying to reveal the truth of what's really going on, and then more than that, trying to find the remedies, which I know you're actively seeking, as many are, and that's what we need. We need to get into that positive energy frequency, and as I say to our members frequently, I do lots of webinars, and we get very high numbers of people coming on those. I actually genuinely believe that no matter what the problem is, there is a solution. The bigger the problem, the bigger the solution. We're facing some very dark and very cleverly constructed problems, which I can go into if you want to get my take on what's going on. And we've got to be equally as smart to overcome these challenges and problems and this dystopian agenda that's coming in all around us. Not just in not just in England, Ireland, and Wales, and Scotland, but everywhere in the world. There is nowhere that this agenda isn't playing out. It is a one world agenda, and it's not just a few guys in a secret society smoking cigars and drinking brandy thinking it up. No, this is a lot more intelligent than that, and a lot more deeper seated than that.
Yeah.
People over the years, Mel, I mean, you may want to ask me this, but I'll preempt it, have said to me, why do you bother doing all this, Ian? You're a bright guy, and you judge that for your sales audience. I've had an interesting career. I rode very high for quite a number of years. I was one of the richest guys in the UK briefly before the Crown decided to take me down. I won lots of awards for innovation and problem solving and all manner of things. And a lot of people have said to me in the last 20 years, why do you bother doing this? You know, you're putting your neck out all the time. You know, you're taking on these guys. They're really powerful. I've been taking the crown on since 2010 in vicious court exchanges and lots of tactics and strategies that are all in my Disruptor documentary. And many of the people that know me well say, well, they say three things. They say, why'd you do it, Ian? They say, I don't think I could do it. And do you think you're ever going to win? Those are the three questions I typically get asked. Why do I do it? Well, if you ask my mum, who's still with us at 88, I used to go and collect people's old newspapers when I was a kid, door to door, and then take them down to the recycling centre and get a few quid. And then I used to go and give it to my neighbour because she was struggling.
Yeah.
And my mum used to say to me, why on earth do you do that, Ian? I said, because she's unable to look after herself very well, so I can do that. Well, don't you want to keep those few quid for yourself? And I said, I don't need it. What do I need it for? She needs it more than me. And that genuinely is how I see the world. Like, we've all got something to offer. And we should all be giving what we can offer to others who are in a less privileged situation, right?
So just on that, why, and I know what people are going to be thinking. Some people are going to be thinking, listening to that, well, hang on a minute. Yeah. You were the richest man in the UK for a short time. Something was driving that, Ian, and it wasn't to go and give it to Aunt Mildred down the road, because you had big houses, flash cars, and all the rest of it. So how would you answer that?
Well, you know, just truthfully, really, I after my professional football career fell apart because I had a head-on car collision and it ruined my lower spine. At the age of 18, I'm now floundering. What am I going to do now? And I went into mechanical engineering briefly, and I really enjoyed that because it suits my brain type. Lots of moving parts and things that you could organise. And I was building cars and all kinds of stuff. I used to take things from the tip and build things that other people had thrown away, and I loved all that. And then I got into financial services in the very early 1980s, and I discovered that. And I am, by the way, I am trying to answer your question, but there is a backstory to it. You see,
yeah.
I discovered that I had a gift. And my gift was to look at people's problems, and lots of people have lots of problems with their world of commerce, their financial world, if you want to call it that. And I had a gift where I could ask people some questions about what they needed and what they wanted from their finances at all different levels of wealth. And I would come up with a plan of how they could achieve their objectives. And I was doing this in the early 1980s. And that became massively successful for me. And basically all I was doing was problem solving. And I love problem solving. Now, if you wind the clock forward many years, and that, you know, I did that, it's called wealth management. And I had one of the biggest practices because it is a professional practice. Sadly, I've got lots of letters after my name, Chartered Insurance Institute qualified at the highest possible level. I did many, many years of study, and I did all that stuff back in the matrix that you do if you want to be a professional. And at the core of everything I've ever done is problem solving. Now, because I was good at it, riches came, but I never did it for the money, ever. My ex-wife, she enjoyed the big houses, the 90-acre estate, the yachts and flying private jets and all that stuff you do. And I'm not saying I didn't like it, but I wasn't doing it for that. I was doing it to solve problems, and I can give you some examples of some of the problems that I tackled that I did solve, and one of the reasons why I was one of the richest guys in the UK for a brief period of time, and why I was offered a deal from the dark side of this whole matrix. There's a very, very dark side of this matrix. It's because I was a very good problem solver. Now, later on, many, many years later, we come into this space, and I've made lots of mistakes. And many of those mistakes were made because I trusted other people who said that they had things that worked that actually didn't work. And I'm building the infrastructure for Matrix Freedom, which is a big infrastructure now. And I'm under attack. I've been in a battle. I've been in a war for many, many years. And I wasn't doing the research up until really about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I really started doing the research about how to solve the problems. And I went back to my core skills of, there's some really big problems here. How are we going to solve them? And you ask people internally in Matrix Freedom, you ask our members, do they think that I know what I'm doing? And I think you'll find that a lot of people do believe in what I'm doing. So I back everything up. My webinars are full of fact. I don't do speculation. I don't do, I just try and uncover the truth and try and piece things together. And that's what I've always done. And back in the Matrix, when I was doing that in the Matrix, some people said I was a bit of a maverick because I just didn't trust the existing systems. I challenged everything. I always believed there's a better way of doing everything. And that's how I built my organization, by challenging the narratives. And, back in the days when I was rubbing shoulders with board members of banks and big hedge funds and big insurance companies and all these people I used to rub shoulders with, I was known as the guy that you could go to who, if you had a complex problem, maybe Ian can figure out a solution for it. And I did some pretty complex stuff, which elevated me up to a joint venture with one of the biggest banks in the UK, who gave me an unlimited credit line, which is never heard of. I've never heard of it before or since, to finance programs that could basically, I thought that the intention the bank had was to give people an advantage, give them a benefit, but actually their plan was to use me as a patsy. And because I wasn't suspicious of the Matrix back in those days, I'm a typical professional, brainwashed professional back in those days. I've got all my qualifications. I've got a huge, big organization. Everything's going really well. Yeah, we had lots of challenges. You don't build something really big in any area without lots of challenges, but just normal stuff, nothing like I've experienced in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, nothing at all like that. And then you find out that a lot of people in the Matrix are bought and paid for. And some people would say, well, they don't really know what they're doing. Maybe they're a bit incompetent. No.
Yeah, no.
The guys at the top are next level. You don't get up to the top unless you are fitting the criteria. So a lot of people might think, oh, there's some idiots at the top who are running this control agenda that don't know what they're doing. And I'm here to tell you they do know what they're doing. And they're only at the top because they've been selected to be at the top and they've been offered a deal. And it's a bit like the mafia, you come in with us and we'll look after you forever. But if you ever cross us, we'll destroy you. And that's what happened to me. And that's why this battle has been going on since, it started in 2005 and it really started heating up in 2009. And ever since then, it's been relentless.
So in simple terms, Ian, you were at the top of your game with your own finance company and you were offered a joint venture with, was it Barclays? You said HBOS before we were recording.
HBOS, in 2001, having spent a year with their technical people on a particular solution that I was working on, they invited me in and I went to all the meetings. I did all the technical stuff that you do, and they bring in all these experts and they look at your program and they said, yeah, we want to back this. And that was all the way through the year 2000. And I would explain what it was if you like, because it's never been done before, strangely enough. Yeah. And basically, I was then offered a joint venture with the bank, which was then Bank of Scotland, became Halifax Bank of Scotland, was then bought out by Lloyds in a fraudulent takeover, which I talk about in all my witness statements. And basically in 2005, the bank was insolvent. Now, in the matrix, forget what I know now, just go back to those days. Banks are supposed to be solvent, right? Companies are supposed to be solvent. If you're in the matrix, you can't run a bank that's insolvent, because that's actually crime if you do that. And I blew the whistle internally in 2005, 4 years after my joint venture started with the bank, that I had serious concerns about their balance sheet, because they were growing exponentially without the capital to back it. And I was questioning how they were doing that internally, and I was basically told to keep my mouth shut. And then 3 years later, I'm brought into a meeting. And just to put this into context, the joint venture I had with them, we had 1 billion of assets under management. So this wasn't just a corner shop thing. This was a big venture, right? And we were talking about many, many bigger things than that. We were talking about making this model go global. If that's the right term, it probably isn't. Worldwide, let's put it that way. I had developed a model that was in finance. It's called an arbitrage model. So you've got assets, one appreciates at this level and credit is at that level. And in between those two, you've got what's called an arbitrage. And I'd found an arbitrage, which is why they gave me the credit line. And it was a very reliable arbitrage. And I was able to reproduce it in many countries. And nobody'd ever come up with this particular type of arbitrage before. And that's why they offered me the joint venture and an unlimited credit line to go and acquire the assets that appreciate at this level, and then the credit line is costing that level. And in between those two is a natural arbitrage. And that's what gave me the joint venture. And then years later, I'm called into a meeting. I used to go to Edinburgh a lot and meet people at a very senior level. I often met board members of the bank. And I was brought into a room, and I was basically sat down, and they said to me, Ian, this is 2007, about 10 months before the alleged credit crisis. We're going to be restructuring the bank's balance sheet, and we need to increase the asset side. And we're going to be taking the assets of the investors in these programs. Are you with us or not? And I said, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
How can you take the assets? And they said, because they can basically do what they like, and they literally can do whatever they like. And I'm here to, as testament to that. They can do what they like at the top of banks. And I said, well, if you're going to take the assets, how are you going to do that? And they said, we're just going to down value them. So now the arbitrage goes in reverse. Now the credit is above the asset, and now it's underwater. And then they can either the investors put more capital in, or they just take all the assets. And that's what they did in the credit crisis, by the way, is the banks just took the assets. And it's 90 billion of assets were taken across the top 6 banks from basically high net worth customers of the bank, business entrepreneurs, high net worth individuals. And that's where a lot of the problems start with, my story, because I revealed all that, and I told them I wouldn't join with them. In fact, I would oppose it, and I opposed it for a long time. And then that's what really set up the vendetta, because then you realise that the bank runs the regulator. It's not the other way around. What you realise is that all these regulators are just there for show. And they're not there to protect the consumer at all. Their job is to protect the system, whilst pretending to protect the consumer. And again, I put all of these things in witness statements. I've had multiple high court cases against the regulators, from the Treasury to the Bank of England to the Financial Services Authority that became the Financial Conduct Authority, to the banks. And, you know, I've got so much experience of the legal system trying to fight these guys, trying to get them to provide justice for those who lost their assets. And many of my old customers, unfortunately, committed suicide. This is a very, very dark story. You know, we're not talking about people who just had their bank account closed and they had to go to another bank. No, we're talking about people being absolutely wiped out.
Yeah, I mean, some of
taking their own life because of it.
Yeah,
Some of our
viewers and listeners will remember the Trevor Mealham. Well, I've had him on twice actually. Trevor obviously got completely screwed over by Lloyd's and has been on a mission, very much like yourself, for years and years and years to get retribution for that. But more recently, he was on because Lloyd's henchmen almost killed him, and then dragged him out and evicted him, and are now selling his house or whatever. Exactly like what you've just said in terms of grabbing the assets. But probably more importantly, in Trevor's case, making an example out of him. But Trevor has often talked about, and I've seen a couple of the videos of people he's been in touch with over the last few years, where exactly that, the husband has committed suicide because of what Lloyd's have put them through. And it's just horrific, absolutely horrific.
I mean, these people are demonic, and I'm here to tell you that I've looked them in the eye. They have no soul. They have no consciousness. They are demonic. And those that rise up to the top have no consciousness. You can't appeal to their empathy. They don't have any. That's what you're up against. And you see the intelligence at the very top of the system. It's like a pyramid. I agree with David Icke's analysis that there's a pyramid for everything. And at the very, very top, you have got an intelligence that is non-human. And I don't care what anybody thinks of that. It is my belief, and I have 20 years battling against this. You know, I have first-hand experience of how dark and how intelligent this is that you're up against. And their plan that they're rolling out everywhere is so dark that if people don't realise that we've got to find a way to solve freedom for ourselves, then if they think that freedom is having a few quid in the bank, they're mistaken. If they think that getting a big house and paying the mortgage off is a freedom, they're absolutely mistaken. If they think that they can move somewhere and escape this dystopian plan, they're mistaken. There's only one way out of this dystopian plan, and that is to create your own environment. You have to have your own infrastructure, and that's, by the way, what Republic of Old Souls is. It is a freedom plan which I've been working on for a long time, where members of it are they're part of a ministry, and there's a very good reason for that, because the governments don't fight the churches. So if you create a church and it's a registered church in the United States, covered under Article 1 of the Constitution, the original United States of America, not the United States Incorporated, it's got very deep protection. And those that become nationals, because it's also a self-declared nation, because it's a body politic, and that's all a nation is. It's a group of men and women that come together with an ideal. And because they're all envoys for the ministry, they get protected by the church. And as we mentioned just before the interview started, give me an example of where any government in the world has ever taken on a church and won in a courtroom. You won't find one.
I certainly don't know of any, but then I haven't been looking. But I'll take your word for it.
I looked. There's a reason why the Amish have been left alone for centuries.
They certainly have.
Agree with how they live or disagree with it, that's not the point. The point is that they are part of a church. And they don't have to register their children into the birth certificate slave system. They don't even have to appear in any courtroom, because they are living under a church. They're all church envoys, right? There's a reason why Tom Cruise one of the richest men in the world of entertainment, is an advocate for the Church of Scientology. Agree with what they believe in or disagree, that's not the point. The point is it's a church. And they have fought against the IRS many times, and they've won every time. There's not a case that I can find, maybe somebody can find one, where a legitimate church, not somebody who calls it a church, oh, I've got a church. No, it has to be done correctly, and I've done it all correctly. They've never been defeated by any government action. I'll ask another question to your audience, right? Now, we all know that there's, in the Catholic Church, there's loads of paedophilia allegations, yeah?
Yeah.
We all know that. It's a very dark truth, right? If you go and speak to Kevin Arnett, who set up Kanata in Canada, and he investigated the crimes against children in Canada by the Crown, and it's a very, very dark story. He's a Nobel Prize nominee. Kevin Arnett, very bright guy. Yeah, if you don't know his story, have a look at it. Kevin Arnett, Kanata in Canada. Now, he tried to get remedy. For years and years and years, he's been persecuted similar to I have been by the Crown. There's a lot of parallels there, right? But even he didn't realize that the protection is afforded if you are part of a church. Because he set up a nation called Kanata and tried to get diplomatic immunity. Well, it doesn't work because a self-declared nation isn't recognized by those that run the system. But a church is. If it's registered and recorded in the right way, it is recognized. And now it takes you into international law, because now you qualify, and this is my case that I'm now taking to the Crown. I'm no longer, Ian the man was never the defendant, but Ian Clifford Stamp, the body corporate, has been under the cosh for 2 years after the arrest. I have, and they don't know this, and I hope they watch this interview, because in a game of chess, you never reveal all your moves, yeah? You're going to lose that game if you tell your opponent what all your moves are that you're thinking of. I served notices on the Crown, all of them, this isn't magistrates level. This is the highest court in the UK we're talking about, yeah? In terms of the power that the court has got here. Having tried to get justice in 2024 against a libelous article that was published by a group called Open Democracy, it was very interesting that case was reversed, and suddenly they issue what's called a civil constraint order against Ian Clifford Stamp, the body corporate. Now, by the way, the body corporate is controlled and owned by them because they created it following my mother and father, who registered this body corporate into their system, and they own the name Stamp. And the reference number on the birth certificate is owned by the Crown. It's their property. So all these people out there saying, oh, you can recoup your birth certificate, is total nonsense. It doesn't belong to you. The credit that they're using to run the game of commerce, in the way that a lot of people talk about it, does not belong to the man or woman. It just doesn't. There's lots of nonsense out there about you can access your birth certificate trust. It's complete nonsense. Because the birth certificate body corporate is registered to the Crown. It's their property. Their name, their registered property.
I get that, but there is one famous woman, I'm trying to remember her name, something like Bibi or something. And and so she's apparently accessed it and has all of these houses around the world and this, that, and the other.
Yeah. Bibi Bacchus has never accessed there is no such thing as credit sitting in an account. It's a total myth. I can explain how it works if you like.
I think it would be useful because everybody, like we were talking before we hit record, and there are lots of good people out there doing lots of good things. and there's different ways to skin the cat, if you like. And I've been on my own journey of that, certainly in the courts, going one way, then going another. And some people will stay in the system and use the system against itself. Some people are doing the common law and the jus res and the personam and all of that sort of stuff. And what you're saying is none of that, as much as it might be truth, as much of that might be factual, is going to work.
No.
Why?
Right, let me explain why, right? And I'm not saying this because I'm trying to dismantle anybody's belief. I'm saying this from 20 years of first-hand experience battling against the smartest and most powerful organization arguably on the planet, because ultimately it's the Vatican, right? Yeah. That's who the Crown reports to, right? So I'm not talking about taking on the council in a council tax issue, or taking on the mortgage provider because they're trying to repossess your house, or taking on the council because you want to build something and not get planning permission. I'm not talking at that level, which is all very stressful, and I'm not undermining that, but I'm talking at the top here, because that's where I've been battling. They've tried to shut me down for all these years because I'm challenging them at the top of that pyramid, right? So if you're going to try and get something to work, it's got to work at the top of the pyramid. There's no point trying to get it to work that lower down in the pyramid, because it might work every now and again, and you think, oh, great, it's working. Everybody else, let's jump on that bandwagon. And then you suddenly find out it's no longer working. And then you can't work out why. And that's some of the mistakes I've made in the last 5 years. If thinking that things are going to work, and they do work, and then they suddenly stop working. And then you've got to say, well, why has it stopped working? Why do some people get a remedy and other ones don't? Is it just randomness? And I don't believe in randomness in this system. There is no such thing as randomness at the level of intelligence at the top of this system. There's nothing random going on. There's a top-down control, and the top is extremely intelligent. So let me go through the things that a lot of people are applying now. And I'm not saying this because I'm criticizing anybody who believes these things. I'm not doing that. I love everybody. I want everybody to come together. But I'm just saying this because I've tried a lot of things, and I've done a lot of research, and I'm now doing things that work. And this is why the Crown is trying to destroy me, because what I'm doing is working, and it will continue to work. Because I think I've figured out how the complex jigsaw puzzle is put together. And there's a lot of misinformation out there deliberately, right? And there's a lot of people who don't really want to invest the time in research. They just want to follow someone else who's may have figured it out. Yeah. And that's one of the problems.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. And I'm not criticizing that either, because we're all busy, right? We've all got stuff to do. By the way, this is what I do 7 days a week. I don't have a family that was destroyed. I don't have lots of hobbies, or I don't do anything like this. This is all I do. This is my mission, right? This is my spiritual mission, and that's what I do. And because I have tried things that don't work, I've learned from experience, I've come up with something which I believe will work forever. And let me explain why things that people try and do don't work, right? So let's have a look at the common lawyers, right? They say, oh, well, we've all been given these rights. Go back to the Bill of Rights, go back to the Magna Carta, Article 61 of the Magna Carta. Let's use all that, right? So there's a lot of people out there who think that that's going to work for them. Superior statutes, constitutional statutes, call it whatever you want to call it. You start quoting that in court cases, and they're going to say that you are a free man on the land, nutter. Right? And they're going to say, your material is nonsense. Yeah. And as much as you want to believe all those things are going to give you power, they don't. So then you have to ask the question, well, why doesn't that give you power? Why doesn't the Bill of Rights? Why doesn't the Magna Carta? Why don't all these superior statutes? Why doesn't rebutting the 12 presumptions of the Bar Guild work? Because a lot of people think all you've got to do is send a notice to the court that you're rebutting all the presumptions of the Bar Guild, and that's going to work for you. Because it's all based on presumption. It's all an administrative system, and you're not going to be administered because you're a man or a woman, yeah? And you stand under these superior statutes, and you've rebutted all these presumptions, and therefore it's like they're in a different jurisdiction to you, and you don't want to join that jurisdiction, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge amount of people out there who think that this is as simple as jurisdiction. All you've got to do is say, I don't want to be operating in the corporate legal jurisdiction. I want to operate in the law as a man or as a woman, and I want to invoke all my rights that have been allegedly given to me through all these superior constitutional acts and statutes. And yet, when you turn up in court and you put all that in your affidavits and your notices, you basically don't get anywhere.
Yep, I can
And
vouch
they
for
actually
that.
lie, really, because they think you're a nutter.
Or a
Now, why
troublemaker.
is that? Or a troublemaker, or you're one of those free man on the land sovereign citizens who think that all you've got to do is say, I don't consent to your jurisdiction. I'm not playing in your corporate fictional world. I'm over here. I'm a man. I'm a woman. So basically, get out of my territory. Get out of my world, because I don't want you in my world. But you see, they're way smarter than that. If you look at what they did, a lot of people talk about they registered a placenta as the body corporate, and I agree with that. Right? I think that research is sound. And then they get joinder, because there's a DNA link between the living man and the DNA of the placenta, right? So they've got the joinder there, right? And then, when you get to the age of 18, if you're in England or Wales or Scotland or wherever you are, you suddenly now you start to take on that name, the name on the birth certificate, right? So you're taking that name on and you're representing that name, which doesn't belong to you. So then suddenly, now you're operating an impersonation fraud. If I turn up and say my name is McDonald, and I've got a fast food chain, and I want to enter a contract with you, I want to open some bank accounts, yeah, in the name of McDonald's, yeah. Some people would say, well, hold on a minute, are you related to that fast food restaurant chain in the world? No. If I pretended to be McDonald's, I'm now impersonating them, yeah? If I turned up and said I'm, some famous actor and I want to get a bank account and a driving license and a passport, they're going to say, is that really you?
Yeah.
So you see then what they've done is they've tricked everybody into an impersonation fraud. And as soon as they send anything, any court case, any summons, any parking ticket, whatever it is, you've already been operating in fraud under the impersonation fraud, right? So that's a problem. And it doesn't matter how many times you say, no, I'm over here, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm under the Magna Carta, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. No, you've been operating in fraud from the moment that you started using their name. And then you say, well, how do I operate in this monopoly board game of commerce if I don't use their name? Yeah, it's like there's this name that I think is my family name, but it isn't. I mean, how many Smiths are there? How many Browns are there? It's not your family name. It's just a name.
Yeah.
And you link that name to the birth certificate registration number, and now it's a corporate entity. It's a person, yeah? So many people have talked about this, and I'm not saying anything that a lot of your audience don't already know. But you see, the reason why all that stuff doesn't work is because you're already operating in fraud. Because you've been using the name. Right from the word go, the first thing you ever got was a national insurance number, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what name is that national insurance number in? You're using their system in fraud. As soon as you got a national insurance number, you're using their system in fraud. As soon as you got a passport, a driving license, a bank account, a mortgage, a loan, you're using their system and you're impersonating their corporate entity. So it doesn't matter how many times you say, oh, no, I'm over here in this other system called the law, and I'm a natural being under spiritual, under God. No, you're the body corporate that you are representing. And if you then look at the agency, because there's an agency law going on here. You know, you notice on people's notices, they say notice to agent is notice to principal.
Yeah.
That's because the law of agency joins these two together. And substance over form, right? So the substance of what you've already been doing is operating in fraud. Are you getting this now? So it's like, as soon as you turn up and say, no, I'm not that corporate, the body corporate over there, and your court case is against that body corporate, and that's not me, they laugh. They're laughing behind the scenes. They're going, well, you've been representing that body corporate from day one. There's a law of agency.
Unknowingly,
Well,
Ian.
But ignorance is you can't use ignorance in the law. You just can't.
I get that, but we've all been duped. Our parents were duped. You know, I registered my son. You know, if I could take that back, I would. So
I'm not defending what they're doing.
What's the answer then? Because we've been duped into it and we're doing it unknowingly. And there are a growing number of people that are starting to understand this a lot more. But there are millions, if not billions, of people that go, shut up, what the hell are you talking about? So what's the answer? Well, we are having fun and games today. Just lost sound on Ian's side. Everything was working his end. Who knows? You were about to tell us. So if the common lawyers are never going to get through the system because it is as corrupt as it is, no matter how much they, are right, what is the solution?
Well, you see, you've got to understand the difference between, and I use the analogy of the man, the woman's not on the monopoly board, and the corporate person is on the monopoly board. And on that monopoly board, everything on that monopoly board is owned and controlled by the crown, everything. So let's go through what that really means, right? So the name of the body corporate is owned and controlled by them. So that's the family name that we've all used, innocently and with good intention. It's owned by them. You link that to the certificate number on the birth certificate. Now you've got a body corporate with a registered number. It's just like a company, yeah? Just think of it like a limited company with a registered number and a name. It's not much different from that. And we've all been going around pretending with good intentions that body corporate is really us. So we've inadvertently, and because we're ignorant and because they treat us as ignorant, because most of us are ignorant, we actually genuinely believe that body corporate is us. So we're impersonating the body corporate, which is the core problem, and they've tricked us into that. And it's very deliberate because they don't want us to have any rights. So the living man, woman has no rights, even though all of this Magna Carta, Bill of Rights, constitutional rights, list them out. There's loads and loads of them. They don't apply because the man, woman has been operating in fraud from day one without realizing it, but ignorance of the law is no excuse. So you can quote and claim anything you like. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm this, I'm that, I'm under God, I'm under whatever. And they will still look at you as an ignorant fraudster. Okay? Because you don't know the law. And you are basically an imbecile in their eyes. because you don't know the law. You have been impersonating this body corporate from day one, and you should know that that isn't you. They're not going to tell you because they don't want really for you to know. But all the information is out there in the public domain. So they've got plausible deniability, right? They will say, well, you've only got to do some research and you'll find out that the man, woman is separate from the body corporate, and we shouldn't be using the registered name of the body corporate because it says on the birth certificate, don't use this for a form of identification, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, lots of people say these things, but what does it really mean, right? So then you go and get a driving license, a passport, a bank card, a mortgage, a loan, or whatever it is, right? Now, every time you sign that contract, whatever the contract is, whatever the census is, whatever the voting for the politician is, you are reinforcing that you are comfortable operating in fraud. It's fraud on fraud on fraud. And you can't say, well, I didn't know because you didn't tell me. Because in the law, ignorance is no excuse. So that's why the common laws don't work, right? Now, I'm not agreeing with this. It's just the way it works, okay? You have to know what you're up against, right? There's no point sticking your head in the sand saying, oh, well, they should have told me all about this as soon as I came into the world, and they should have told my mum and dad, and they should teach it in the school. No, they're not going to do that because their goal is ultimate control. And they're operating from a higher level of intelligence. So they don't want to give those who are not exerting their intelligence any rights, do they? They don't want to give people rights just by telling them, here's a guidebook to how this system works. And by the way, if you study it, you can break free of their system. No, because their system is all about control. So they're not going to give you the guidebook. But all the information is out there in the public domain for those who want to find it. Okay? Now, most people don't have any need to find it. This is how it's genius, right? Because most people are going through their life with, you know, they've got the job, they've got the car, they've got the house, they've got the holidays, they've got the kids, they've got the hobbies, they've got the sports, they've got all these things that they do. Yeah, and they've had a few problems here and there, but nothing life-changingly challenging. They might have some illnesses, they might have this and that, but they don't have the motivation to go and look for how the system is being wired up.
Yeah.
Now that is genius, yeah? So you deceive everyone and you give them the false impression that they've got a house and a car and a business and a job and all these different things, and their life is cool, yeah? They're not going to rise up against you, are they?
Yeah.
Because you've deceived them into this system, this belief system, and all the people that they know are kind of in that belief system as well. So it's only those that get completely fucked that are going to look into it, yeah?
Yeah.
That's the truth, yeah? And, you know, you're looking at a guy who's been fucked for 20 years. So I've had to look into this. And I've had to look into it deeper than most people have looked into it, because I'm taking them on at I never went to war with any of these guys. They all went to war with me. And I just try to live my life, but they kept on, you know, destroying everything I built. It's all in my Disruptor documentary. You'll see the sort of things I've had to endure. And I'm not saying that because I want anyone to give me admiration. It's just the truth, right? So I've been forced. I had three options. I could go and commit suicide. Yeah, go back to source. Fuck it, about enough. Let's have another go next time. You know, give me another piece in the video game and I'll have another experience. I could fight them and try and do so in such a way where they couldn't beat me, or I could surrender to them and just give them everything they wanted. Those are the only three options I had. And I chose the middle one, not to fight them in war, but to fight them with intellect. So if you're going to fight them with intellect, you've got to know how their game works, yeah? If you look at the art of war, you've got to know your enemy. you've got to think like they think. How have they wired this up? How are they enslaving everybody? How are they fooling everybody? And why are these people not getting remedy that are doing common law, that are doing all these different things and quoting all these different things in their court cases? Why are they not getting remedy? So then you get back to, okay, fine. So the body corporate is controlled and owned by them, and everybody's representing it in fraud without realizing it. And they're compounding that fraud by voting, heaven help us, for politicians, where they're actually saying, if I vote for that guy, that girl in my local area or the national level, they're going to help me. Yeah? Well, it's totally brain dead to even believe that a politician has got your interests at heart. Show me an example of any politician anywhere who's actually made a positive difference anywhere in the world.
Andrew Bridgen?
He was drummed out.
Well, I know, but he was trying his bloody hardest while he was in.
Oh, he was. But he was drummed out. I know all about his story. I've reviewed all of his material. As soon as he started telling the truth, he was drummed out. He literally marched out of the environment, wasn't he? So he's no longer a politician, because if you're trying to do the right thing, you're not going to be a politician. It's as simple as that.
Mm.
You can't do the right thing as a politician. Have a look at the word politic. You're basically a deceiver by definition. That's what politic means. If you're in the politic, you are a deceiver. You are a liar by profession. Same as a lawyer is a liar by profession. It's the same thing. So no politician is going to persuade me that they've got my interests at heart when I absolutely know they don't. And the system is not wired up for them to operate a system that's going to benefit the majority. That isn't what they're doing. And anybody who thinks that politicians are the answer haven't researched it enough. They just haven't done their research. Why do we need a government? You know? So anyway, all these things are set up to deceive us, right? So then on the Monopoly board, people think, oh, great, okay, fine. So I'll get a job. Well, who's got the job? The body corporate's got the job. Let's go and get a car because we've now got some salary coming in so we can get a car loan. Who's got the car loan? The body corporate. Who does that car get registered to? The Crown. So that you can rent that car, which is all you're doing, and drive it round in commerce. And then you can go and get a house and pretend that you're the homeowner. Yeah? Well, the homeowner and the resident are body corporates, belong to the Crown. So that house, that lovely house that you spent all this time redecorating it and re-engineering it and doing the garden and putting a new kitchen in and all that stuff that we've all done, that house belongs to the Crown. The mortgage is lent to the Crown. So people say, oh, I've been repossessed. No, you haven't. You never owned the house in the first place. The body corporate has the house. The body corporate is already registered to the Crown. So the Crown registered body corporate is entered into a debt contract with a bank. And the bank, and this is big, this is going to be a lot, people might have to play this a few times, right, to get their head around this. Because it took me a while to figure this out. All these mortgages, all of these loans are loans from the Crown to themselves. Because the body corporate is registered to them. It's their property. Now, if you look into the legislation, it says all obligations are obligations of the Crown. The same as it is in the United States Incorporated. All debt, all taxes are obligations of the United States Incorporated. And it says that in the UK legislation as well.
Yeah. All fines and forfeitures are, no, I'm getting that wrong.
They all belong to the Crown.
Yeah, and when is it the Local Government Acts as well? It's written in there.
Yeah. Interpretation Act, Local Government. There's loads of acts that say this, right? I quote it all in my paperwork, by the way. Now, you see, when you realise that the body corporate is theirs, you've been impersonating it, so you're perpetually in fraud. You then walk into a court because you don't realise, that you're never going to get anywhere in a courtroom, right? Because you, the man, woman, has walked in. So that's a big mistake, which is why no man or woman should ever go in a courtroom. But you can't just say, oh, I'm not going to turn up, because they're going to steamroller you if you don't turn up, yeah?
Especially if you've got assets.
Well, those assets are theirs, by the way.
Well, exactly, but we all think it's ours, yeah.
We think it's ours, and this is where the deception is deeper than a lot of people realise. You see all these people that think, oh, I'm going to do all these things because I need to save my house. I need to get rid of that fraudulent mortgage provider. I need to get rid of that bank because they're pirates, and the people out there who are battling and fighting the banks. Think about it. The bank is also registered to the Crown. The mortgage is granted to a body corporate that is registered to the Crown. And yet the man, woman thinks that body corporate is them, that owns the house, that is having a problem with the mortgage provider. No, all of these problems are on the monopoly board. And the man and the woman shouldn't be on the board. They can't go on the board. Because that board is artificial. It's just a vision. It's not real. So the solution is you have to atone for the fraud. So this is step one, right? And I don't, you know, people can challenge this, and I'll debate anybody in the world on this, and I think I'll hold my own pretty well, right? If you atone for the fact that you have been operating in fraud from day one, and that you're rescinding all of those signatures, all of those contracts, and you're taking your rightful position as an executor of the decedent estate, because remember, the body corporate is a decedent estate. It's not living. It can't live. It's a corporation. It's an estate and a corporation that is dead. So what you're doing is you're saying, look, I've been representing this body corporate from day one, and I've just realized that it is a fraud. And I didn't realize that I was operating an impersonation fraud. So I'm atoning for my sin. Because you are operating in sin, whether you want to accept it or not, audience, you are, just by using the name. Okay? So you atone for that, and you put everybody on notice that you're no longer going to use that name. And you use the proper name. Ian Clifford is the proper name, by the way. Stamp is the corporate name, which is why I don't use it anymore.
So Clifford is your middle name, is that right?
Ian Clifford. Ian is they're both Christian names. There's no such thing as a middle name, by the way.
Yeah,
they're
okay,
Christian names. So Ian Clifford is a Christian names, and Stamp is the name on the birth certificate that has been registered as a corporate entity with the registration number, as the Crown's body corporate. Ian Clifford, the man, or you could call yourself anything you want, as long as it's not the name on the birth certificate, right? So in all your official documents, you are rescinding the use of the name. That's step one. Then, and if you look at the Sesquivay V Acts of 1666 and 1707, you can make a declaration that you are alive. Because that's what it says you should be doing. In the 1707 Act, it talks about coming back from being presumed dead and providing evidence that you are alive, right? So that's the second thing you do.
So when you when you said about sending notices to everybody to say you didn't know you were in fraud and you're rescinding this, who is that going to? Like all of the people that you've got contracts with, as well as who else?
Well, you've got to do it with the coroner, because the UK coroner is the register of deaths and marriages and births, deaths and marriages, right? The coroner is deaths and births. The marriages are registered somewhere else, because that's a corporation as well. The marriage is a corporation. So births and deaths are all controlled by the coroner. Now you might think, well, what the fuck's it got to do with the coroner? That's because every body corporate is dead.
Yeah, of course.
So the coroner is recording all the body corporates because they're all dead. Yeah. So you serve a notice there, and you serve a notice to anybody else that there's any contract between the two parties of a contract, whoever the two parties are, the body corporate, which is not you. You're a man over here or a woman over here, and you've got the body corporate with a bank contract, with a contract with the council, with a contract with whoever it is. It doesn't matter who it is. It's all the same. And by the way, every UK company is also void. But how does a company get formed? Because the body corporate turns up and says, I want to be a shareholder and a director of a company. Well, that body corporate who wants to be a shareholder or director or both is operating in fraud. So every single company in the UK can be voided because you rescind the fraud. So if your company's got problems with debts, problems, bankruptcies, whatever, litigations, it can all be rescinded and can all be voided because you have to atone for the sin of operating the body corporate as if it were you. So that's the second thing that you do, right? Now that on its own won't achieve very much. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to challenge whoever it is who's got these contracts to prove that they've actually got a contract with you, the living. Now, how are they going to do that? It's impossible, right?
Yeah.
Now you go to the next level, right? Now, the living you, the man, the woman, and this is where the common lawyers will agree with this, right? Becomes an envoy for a church. And now in international law, not legal, law, you're recognized as a church envoy. Now, the Clive Edwards of this world and all those guys who are talking about all you've got to do is operate under God, then I totally agree with them. But what mechanism are you using to operate under God? Just a notice? I'm under God? Or are you actually, are you registered as a church envoy, as a living man or woman? And now you move above all the crown and all their acts and statutes. Guess what? They don't apply to church envoys who are also diplomats. So now you've rescinded the fraud, the sin, you've wiped out all those contracts, and if they want to come after you, now you can invoke, which is what I'm doing. If you take a look at my Ian Clifford website and my case against the Crown, I've now invoked my rights as the head of a church, because I am the head of a church. You know, people think churches is all about reading the Bible or reading the Quran. It's not. A church is just a belief system. And what I believe in is operating in spirit as a creditor and a beneficiary in peace without causing anybody harm or loss. That's my belief. That's my religion. And if those people who want to join Republic of Old Souls share that belief, then that is our religion. That's our church. And you don't have to be in one country or another. You can be anywhere. And international law protects church envoys. So now you've got access to the Magna Carta, to the Bill of Rights, to this, that, and the other, because you're now recognized as a man or a woman, and you've got the extra layer of protection as you're a church envoy, which is why the Amish do it, which is why the Church of Scientology does it like this. And as we mentioned before the interview started, if your audience can find a case where the government has sued the church and won anywhere in the world, I'd love to see that case, because I've searched high and low and I can't find any.
Well, we hear it all the time, don't we? You know, like people can be exempt on religious reasons. Then if you can prove that the building is a church or used for religious whatever, it's not liable for council tax.
That's right.
I remember. I mean, I was in sales for a long time, but I remember writing down religious on a contract for a lease. It was a franking machine. That's what I used to sell a long time ago. And it got rejected because it was religion. And of course, I was too young and naive to understand any of it. But so I get it. I get it. And I've always wondered, well, anybody could say anything. If you wanted to get yourself out of the system and just say, well, I'm the sunglass religion, or whatever you want to call yourself, you know?
No, you've got to actually form a church. You can't just say we're a church. You've got to form it. I've done that. You know, there's a particular way of doing it. And I've done it. I did it in February this year. And I also created Republic of Old Souls as a self-declared nation, which under the Montevideo Convention you don't have to be recognized to have a nation. So I'm the president of a nation that is self-declared as a nation, that is also a church, that is registered in the United States as a church, the same as the Amish are, the same as the Church of Scientology is.
Does
and
that
find
need
me
to
a
be
case where they've ever beaten those guys, and I'd love to read it.
Does there need to be 600 to create a nation, or 300?
No. You look at body politic. A body politic can be two. Can't be one. It has to be a group. So a group is two, yeah? It has to be more than one. And a knitting circle can be a nation. You could be on a Wednesday night doing your knitting, and there's 5 of you, and that's a nation. But is it a church? No, because it's not recorded anywhere as a church. So if you want to invoke international law, you have to have a registered church that you're an envoy for. You can't just say we're a church. This is why the common law group, which I love, but the energy of these groups is amazing, right? Their intention, their spirit is off the chart amazing. I love them. I love all of them, but they haven't joined enough of the dot site because they haven't needed to. Because they are, and forgive me for saying this, they are living in a delusion that if they read all these things, oh, the man's got protections under the Constitution, and it's all you've got to do is say this and that and the other, and they'll leave you alone. They don't. Because at the same time as that, how many people who are doing notices, oh, I'm a spiritual being under God, the next moment they're using their bank to make a payment. They're sitting in their car driving down the road with a driving license. But on their notices, oh, no, I'm a spirit under God. Really? Well, how is it that you're representing this corporate entity in fraud then? You're not much of a spirit, are you, under God, if you're doing that? That's what the system would look at it, you see?
Yeah, this is where people say they use the system when they need to and opt out, you know, and that is, I've heard that a lot, because we all feel like we've been duped into it. Therefore, we should be allowed that privilege, if you like.
I'd love to agree with that. You know, I'll use the system when it suits me and I'll step out of it when it suits me. No, you're either in or you're out. You can't be partially pregnant. You either are or you're not. Yeah?
Yeah.
So you see, the inconvenient truth of this is that if you really want freedom from the matrix, is that you've got to step out of it but control it. But you control it by rescinding the fraud. So you take control of that body corporate, but by rescinding using the name. So now you've got a piece on the monopoly board that you are now in control of because you've rescinded the fraud. And you can void all the contracts. But let's get down to things that really, really work, right? I want to get into the credit recoupment stuff, because this is the ultimate remedy, right? Now, there are 3 theories out there of where money comes from, right? Professor Richard Byrne has been talking about this for 25 years.
Yeah.
I started reading his research papers in the mid-2000s because that's what I used to do, yeah? I was a money guy, so I wanted to know what's going on. And this is one of the reasons I was challenging HBOS's balance sheet, or it was Bank of Scotland then, because it didn't make any sense to me, right? Now, I'm going to say something really controversial here, but again, I'll debate anybody. I don't care who they are. Bring Dan Needle in, bring the head of the Bank of England in. I don't care. Bring anybody in and I'll debate them on this, right? But they won't ever take my debate. I've offered the FCA many, many times to debate me on stuff, and they never accept it. They say, no, sorry, we're not interested in that debate. Richard Werner wrote The Princes of the Yen in about 2001, I think it was. Now, why did he write that? Do you know Professor Richard Werner?
I've seen a couple of his videos. I haven't read any of his work though. Yeah.
He's off the chart intelligent, this guy. He's a proper professor, right? And in terms of understanding how commerce and banking works, he's your guy. In my experience, in my evaluation, I've read all of his material. He absolutely knows this stuff inside out. And guess what? Has he ever really got any traction? No, they drum him out like they drummed me out, right? Now, there are three theories of where the money comes from. But the first thing that people have got to really get a comprehension of is that there is no money. Now, a lot of people say, oh, there's no money. You know, what do you mean, Ian? Well, I would reverse that and say, well, what do you think money is? Because when you look at a banknote, it just says promise to pay on it, yeah?
Backed by nothing.
Well, it's actually backed by our conscious energy. Because they've been harvesting our energy ever since they created this current monetary system. And it's fucking genius how they've done it. It's next level. So people say, oh, well, money, that's that stuff that you use to go and pay for things, yeah? Well, how do you pay for anything if there's no money of substance? You can't pay for anything. All you can do is promise someone that you're going to pay them in the future, which is what a banknote is, which is what a bill of exchange is, yeah, which is what a security is. Because there's no money. If I came to you and said, here's a gold coin, Mel, what are you going to do with it? Can you take it down? Yeah, you might better sell it to someone and they give you some promises to pay, yeah?
Yeah.
But you can't go down the greengrocer with a gold coin because they're going to say, well, we can't take that. And in fact, it's actually it's illegal to use gold and silver as money. A lot of people don't know that. Because they,
I wish we had greengrocers, Ian.
Yeah, well, I'd love to see greengrocers as well. You can see my age. Yeah, I'm still talking about greengrocers, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are some out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Open all hours, that program that used to be on, if you're in that generation, which I am. So anyway, let's get off of greengrocers. So let's have a look at the three theories of money. Right. So the government creates the money. Yeah. You ask people, where does the money come from? Oh, the government creates it, don't they? No. How does the government create any money? There isn't any money and they can't create it. Well, it must be the central banks that create it then. Yeah, because they're all powerful, aren't they? They must be creating the money. Yeah. Or the other one is, well, I just don't know. But there's, there seems to be a lot of it around, so someone's creating it, and I don't really understand it. So it's got to be the government or the central bank, isn't it? Because those are the three theories. Oh, they're the people that say I don't really get it. They say, well, it's that fractional reserve system, isn't it? That's what they say. So I go into the bank and put £1,000 in the bank, and then they can lend 10, because that's the fractional reserve system, yeah. Which a lot of people have been duped into believing that that's how it works. No, none of those theories are right, and it's not just me saying this. The Bank of England says this. The Central Bank of Chicago says this. The Professor Richard Werner, all over his research papers, says this. So let's talk about how does this stuff just get created. But before we do that, I want your audience to think about a question. According to the IMF, in the last published study, there is $370 trillion of debt in the world. If you ignore derivative contracts, which is a subject for a different day, just look at world debt. Go and Google the IMF's latest paper on world debt. And it will tell you the last time they looked into it, which is 2023, there was $370 trillion of world debt. So who's it owed to? Is it owed to the government? Which government? Is it owed to the central banks? Which central bank? Is it owed to China? Is it owed to Russia? Is it owed to George Soros? How about Bill Gates? Is it all owed to him? Is it owed to 20 people, 100 people? No. It's all owed back to us because it's our energy that floats the whole system. So that when you get that in your head, it's like, well, this debt problem isn't real, is it really? Because there is no money and all this debt is owed back to the creditors. Well, who are they? They're the men and the women. So when you understand this game of Monopoly, that all that stuff on the board is owned by the Crown, let's just call it the Crown, and the credit that's on that board ultimately belongs back to the man or the woman because it is conscious energy that they're harvesting. That is what is backing that debt, is conscious energy. Now, how do they manipulate the conscious energy to get it onto the Monopoly board? They do it through securities. They do it through depositing securities. Right, so go into the bank and say, I want to put in £10,000 into a brand new bank account. And the bank people, if you ever could get a meeting with a bank, which is probably unlikely now, but just imagine you could have a meeting with a bank and you go in there and you say, I've just opened this account with you and I want to transfer £10,000 into this bank account. And let's say that the next day you looked in your online statement and there's £10,000 sitting in the account. And the other account that you transferred it from went down by 10,000. It looks like a transfer occurred, yeah? Yeah. Bank 1 transferred to Bank 2 and now 10,000's moved from one to the other. It's an illusion. The 10,000 that was in bank number 1 is just a ledger entry. There's no money. It's just a ledger entry. It's credit. It's energy that belongs to the living man, woman. And the new balance is a new creation of credit. But it looks like a transfer occurred. It's just a ledger. Now that credit is created on the back of a promise. So the body corporate that actually belongs to the Crown is a banker. Because under the Bills of Exchange Act, a person, the definition of a person is a banker. So a person is the body corporate. So the Crown actually gave us a banker to use. They never told us that, did they? And we've been using it in fraud all the time. Which is another reason why people lose their houses on repossession. Because the public banker, with the name of the birth certificate on it, has created that credit in fraud. You seeing how deep this problem is? Yeah. Now, the owner of the credit. Let's just use simple language. The owner of the credit, the creator of the credit, is the man, the woman, because it's the energy that flows through the signature that goes onto the Monopoly board through the person, which is a banker. And it goes round the board, and it's not really money, because every time somebody on the board wants to make a payment, they're creating a new security. Every time someone signs for a mortgage, they're creating a new security. The bank's got nothing to lend, zero. And in fact, if you look in a bank's charter, it says they're prohibited from lending. So how many of your audience know that banks are prohibited from lending? They don't know that, do they? Probably.
No.
Not very many, right? Now, why would a bank be prohibited from lending? Because the bank is owned by its shareholders, or it's publicly owned, and they're prohibited from lending shareholder capital. So all they can do is take securities in from their customers as deposits. So you go to your bank and you say, I want a mortgage. And the bank says, okay, fine. You do it online, you do it in person, you do it through a broker, however you do it, it's all the same. Whoever it is who's saying that they are providing the mortgage, whoever that is just using your deposit of your security to create credit. And that credit belongs to the man, the woman, who can't be on the monopoly board because they're not permitted to go on that board because it's all artificial and they're real. So the bank then uses a fraudulent bookkeeping entry, and they treat that credit like a deposit, like you've gone into the bank and you're depositing a credit, because that's what a mortgage is. It's a credit deposit. It's a security. It's yours, the living man. It belongs to the living man, woman. And then the bank is going to treat that as if it were their asset. And the banks have all been given an exemption in accounting. So all the banks have got this power because they don't have to report that deposit as a liability to them. They report it as an asset to them. So now the bank's balance sheet is inflated from that deposit, which is all it is a promise to pay, nothing else. No transfer ever occurred. If it's a bank payment or if it's a mortgage or a credit card or loan, it's all the same. So now the bank's got this credit on its ledger that it can send back some currency. Again, it's just digits. It's all digital. So people say, when are they going to bring in CBDCs? Well, the only difference between the system we've got today and a CBDC system is that it's linked, the CBDC system is linked to your social score. That's the only difference. We've already got a digital, centrally controlled system today. We've had it for many, many years. People think all these countries are different. They're not. They're all registered to the United States, incorporated. Every single one of them. There's no such thing as Russia, America, China. They're all corporations, all registered to the United States Incorporated. And you can prove that by looking at the EDGAR database. And you can prove it by looking at the Securities and Exchange Commission listing for all the countries. So all this nonsense about this country is going to go to war with that country, it's complete nonsense because they're all centrally controlled by the United States Incorporated, the District of Columbia. And all the rest of it is a whole load of theatre, which I could talk about forever because I've done loads and loads of study on this. And I do a whole webinar, a 2-hour webinar on the one world system of commerce.
So with the District of Columbia and, the inner city of London is supposed to be the finance part of the trilogy, if you like. And so everybody talks about, we are the final snake of the head or whatever. So is it not London that controls that? You're saying the District of Columbia does?
Well, define London. I mean, London is just a name, right? The City of London is a corporation. And that corporation is registered to the United States on the public side of the ledger. So you remember there's a private and a public side of all these ledgers. The private side is the living man, woman. The public side is the corporate side. So the City of London as a corporation is registered in the public side on the monopoly board to the United States Incorporated on the public side, the artificial corporate ledger. But the control of the United States is on the private side. So all these people talk about the trilogy and they talk about, oh yeah, the Vatican controls everything. Well, you've got to understand that there's a public and a private here. And on the public side, which is all the commerce side, which is the monopoly board I talk about, it's all basically controlled by the United States Incorporated, which is the District of Columbia. Who controls that is on the private side. So you have to get a comprehension of the public and the private, which is really what we're talking about when the living man, his energy is put into the corporations through the monopoly board system, through the public banker, which is the corporation that belongs to the crown, which is really registered to the Vatican, ultimately. But we don't really need to go down these rabbit holes to understand commerce, right? Because you can go down all these rabbit holes and get lost. What the audience needs to comprehend, in my opinion, is how the monopoly board works. It is a board that is being set up with the illusion that you own things on the board. You don't. The credit on that board originates from the energy of the man and the woman. It's been extracted from them very cleverly into debt. And that debt looks like the man, woman owes it back, but all the debt is owed to the crown because it is all created on the crown's monopoly board. So no man or woman has a debt. No man or woman has a passport. No man or woman has a bank account. It's only the body corporate. So everything on that monopoly board is controlled by the crown. All the credit belongs to the crown. All obligations belong to the crown. Taxes, debts, everything belongs to the crown. Because you see the public and the private, you can't have a private system that is suddenly in debt to the public system. You can't have that. So everything on the monopoly board is on the public system. It's all controlled and owned by the crown, and all the debts belong to them. But they use the agency of the fact that the men and women have been fraudulently representing the body corporate to ensnare and make the man, the woman who's living, the surety for the body corporates that are all on the monopoly board. And the majority don't know that's how the system works. And those that realise that there's a public and a private, they haven't figured out how it really works. And they're trying to get remedy in fraud all the time, which is why they don't get any remedy, right? Now, let's look at what you can do if you really want freedom from the matrix. The first thing you've got to do is to recoup the credit. Because all that energy, you've basically put it on the monopoly board. It's basically abandoned on the monopoly board, and it's all owed back. So that's bank payments, mortgages. Let's just take those two, right? So in your audience, you've probably got however many thousands of people in your audience who have got one mortgage, two mortgages, three. They've had 5, 10 mortgages. Add the face value of those mortgages together.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot, yeah? That's all abandoned credit which can come back if you know how to file for it. Now, if you've got a current mortgage and you want to void it and then discharge it and then recoup the credit, which is what we're doing with success, what we could help you with, right? So the first thing you do is void the mortgage contract. You're not doing it with a court. You never go anywhere near any courts with this process because you're never going to get any remedy trying to fight and battle in the court because they're going to laugh at you behind your back. You're never, ever going to get a remedy there. No one in the world's ever going to get a remedy fighting banks in courtrooms about debt. It's never going to happen because one case anywhere in the world is precedent for all the other cases. It's never going to happen. So all these people that think you can outsmart them, you can use the Constitution, you can use this, that, the other, it's never going to work. And they're never going to let anybody win. Ever. The closest you can ever get is private settlement where you're gagged.
Yeah, NDAs.
NDAs, gagging orders, all kinds of stuff. Go to jail if you tell the truth. That's the sort of thing they're going to do if they ever did that. And they don't need to do it because all the debt they know actually belongs to them. So people are fighting thinking it's their debt. It's not their debt. It's the Crown's debt. So what do you do about it? You can void the contract by rescinding the name, by serving notice on everybody that the mortgage was created in fraud, but you're not serving this on a court. Who is in charge of all the mortgages? Have you ever watched the movie The Big Short?
Yeah.
Right. The Big Short is all about what's called mortgage-backed securities, or CDOs, credit derivatives, or credit derivative obligations, credit debt obligations, call them what you want. At the top of the pyramid, now this is sadly where I used to play, right? You're now in the investment banking world. You're now in Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, BNY Mellon. Now, all these guys I used to do things with back in my financial services days. So these are the gods of the finance world, yeah?
Yeah.
And they're all in America. I wonder why.
Mm.
So have a look at your mortgage, which isn't yours, but let's just call it your mortgage, right? Because for easy reference. Now, that mortgage, if it's current, will be registered as a security with an indentured trustee somewhere in Wall Street, New York, where all the indentured trustees operate. Now, those securities, because your mortgage is a security that's being traded in the investment banking markets. Let's have a look and see what happened, right? So you, at some point in the past, you signed a mortgage contract, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
You must have signed something or filled.
I signed something, but whether it was the true contract, who knows?
Who knows? But they don't really care about that because all they want is to get your signature. You don't even have to sign with a pen now for it to be classified as a signature. You can type some digits on your screen, on your keyboard, and that's deemed to be a signature, right? Yeah. In their system of commerce, right? So it doesn't matter how you do it. They will say that you created a security. The body corporate is a banker extended and deposited a security with the bank. Now, the first thing the bank's supposed to do is record that as federal income. We have a one world system. It's all United States. Forget that the bank might be in the, in England or Wales or wherever it is. No, it's all registered to the United States. Every bank is, because it's all one world centralized system. Everything is recorded at the Depository Trust Company in Waterbury Lane. Get that for a name, right? All commerce, it's all currency, it's all flowing down the river in Waterbury Lane, New York. Okay? So, this security that you created, it belongs to you. You are the holder of that security. The bank operates as the nominee, using your credit to profit from your credit. Now, when you deposited that credit with them, they were given an exemption from the United States Treasury to not report it as federal income. Because if all the banks had to report every mortgage as federal income, the whole banking market would collapse. So they're given an exemption to not report that deposit as income to the bank until you turn up as the holder of the credit, as the owner, creator of the credit, and you report that because it belongs to you, yeah? So your notice to the indentured trustee, not to the bank, not to the court, no, to the guys who control the securities at the top of the pyramid, is that you are now reporting this deposit that whenever it was made is federal income. And they haven't reported it on their balance sheet, which is what I said to HBOS in 2005. How the fuck are you financing your bank? Because I'd read all Professor Richard Werner's papers. How are you financing your bank? Because it looks a bit weird to me. Because they're taking customer deposits and claiming that the assets belong to them, but they don't. They belong to the customers. So the bank's balance sheet is completely and utterly fucked. Every bank is, by the way. You're now starting to understand why the Crown don't want to silence me? Because I get all this. Right, so now the indentured trustee has been involved in what's called RICO fraud, which is a crime in the United States. It's embezzlement and it's deception and it's RICO fraud for false accounting under GAAP, which is the generally accepted accounting principles. Because the indentured trustee is ultimately responsible for recording your deposit in this mortgage security that belongs to you. But they've recorded it that it's an asset that belongs to the bank that created the mortgage. So it's a fraud, yeah?
Okay.
Now, people are going to say, well, you know, that's all very well, Ian, but what are they going to, you know, how can you get them to do something about that? Because, you know, you say it's fraud and the court says it's not fraud. We're not going into a court, by the way. There's no court in this process at all. You're serving a notice on the indentured trustee, if you're doing this, that says that you've now realised that you are the holder of the credit. And the bank never reported it correctly. It's federal income, so that's a violation. There's all sorts of misdemeanors in US tax code. And it's RICO fraud. And guess what? The indentured trustee is liable for that because they are a fiduciary for your mortgage. And the fiduciary is under trust law. It's very powerful, way more powerful than equity or administrative law. Trust law is way more powerful. Now, you can hold the indentured trustee personally liable for not recording your mortgage in the right way. But you're not going to go to war with them. You're sending a bill of exchange to discharge the mortgage. Now, people have talked about this. You've had Richard Bobes interview people. Other people have come on shows and said, yeah, you can use bills of exchange to settle your gas bill, your water bill, your utilities bill. And some people have said, oh, yeah, you can use it for mortgages. Not in the way they're doing it, you can't. And the reason why is because you've got to serve it at the right place. You can't serve a bill of exchange to the water company and expect them to just take it on board and say, well, thanks very much. You have to know who they report to. You have to have some leverage for them to accept it. All of these corporations who've all got DUNS numbers, yeah? Where are they ultimately registered to?
America.
United States. So you've got to serve this stuff in the United States, right? And in mortgages, let's just talk about mortgages, because I could go down all sorts of other things, which maybe we'll do on a different time. But just mortgages, right? Because mortgages is the biggest, one of the biggest problems out there in the world. You serve this notice on the indentured trustee, you serve it on the mortgage provider, and you're also giving them the credit to discharge it. And then what you do is you recoup what belongs to you. And that triggers a tax charge on the bank because they never reported the income that you deposited with them in the first place. So now the bank has to pay tax on the recoupment of your mortgage. So whatever the face value of the mortgage is owed back. And the bank has misreported it from day one.
Well, they won't like that, surely.
There's nothing they can do. They're in fraud. They're operating a RICO fraud. And they've misaccounted under GAAP. It's very serious. And you're not doing this in a judge where a judge is going to say, oh, yeah, well, don't worry about any of that. You know, we don't get involved in things like that. No, you're doing it with personal liability with the indentured trustee on the hook. And how do you get them to leverage them? If you ever watched the program Suits on the, you know, the program Suit, if you ever watched Peaky Blinders, how do they always win? They get leverage on the opponent.
Yeah.
So this is how you get leverage. You do a UCC1 lien. Now, lots of people say, oh, yeah, we use the UCC1 lien to take a lien out over the body corporate. This is things like BB Bacchus talks about these things and other people talk about them. It doesn't work because the body corporate belongs to the Crown. So you're taking a lien out on the Crown's corporation? Really? That doesn't work, does it? But you can take a lien out on the indentured trustee. Now, I used to be a trustee. I was a pension trustee for some years, right? If you have a license as a pension trustee, you have to be, your body corporate has to be solvent. You can't operate in financial services underwater. You can't be in debt. It's forbidden. You have to have more assets than liabilities. If you're going to be a trustee for others, at their fiduciary, which I used to be for big pension funds, I was the trustee for many thousands of people with pensions. You can't do that in the matrix with a fucked up personal balance sheet because you're not going to get the license. You have to be solvent. Now, when you register a lien in the United States system under the Uniform Commercial Code, and it's all done correctly, that creates a massive liability over the indentured trustee's legal person. And that fucks up their license. So what are they going to do? Are they going to accept that bill of exchange now? Yes. And you're not going anywhere near a court. You don't need a court to go anywhere to do this. So this is what I've learned, Mel. I used to think you can go to courts and get remedy. No, you can't. I used to think you can serve notices and affidavits on banks and they would take notice. No, they won't. You've got to know where their weaknesses are. And their weaknesses are in banking fraud. Where Trevor Meelam, I listened to the interview you did with him a few weeks ago, and I feel for the guy. He's been fucked up. They've beaten him up. They've given him a heart attack, and he still thinks you can beat the banks by you guys are pirates and I'm honourable and honest. It's never going to float. You have to know where their weaknesses are. You have to know the art of war. You have to look at it from their viewpoint and how are they getting away with this and where are their weaknesses. Now, they cannot do anything about recouping the credit. There's nothing a bank can do about that. Why? Because the owner of the credit is filing a tax return to recoup what is lawfully theirs. That's mortgage securities recoupment. There's nothing in the law that is going to protect the bank. And you're not going in a court and you're not asking a judge, oh, can I recoup my credit on my mortgage? No, you're not going anywhere near a judge. You're doing this directly with the United States Treasury. And guess what? Under HJR 192 and IRS publication 1212, the banks are operating as nominees for the Monopoly Board. And it says it in all of their legislation that if the owner of the credit files a tax return, which is what they should have done at the beginning, that credit comes back to the creditor, which is how bank payment recoupments, how mortgage securities recoupments work. And then people say, oh yeah, but Ian, does it work? We've had checks. We've got hundreds of members with credit on their tax transcripts. It's not just a handful, it's hundreds and hundreds.
I'm one of them.
And you're one of them, and I'm one of them. And my family's one of them. And I don't just do this for the members, I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for my family. I'm doing it for anybody who wants to operate as the creditor, because it's lawful. And it's how the system is built. And you're not using a court or anything to do with the rigged system. You are invoking your right to recoup the credit, which is actually abandoned credit. And you're doing it lawfully and ticking all the boxes that need to be ticked. And you're also doing it through an international trust, which is getting a bit deeper and a bit more technical. You don't really need to go there, but you're not sending a tax return from Mel Clark to the United States Treasury. You're not doing that. You're using an international trust to do the tax filings. Now, people like Simon Goldberg, who've had a go at recouping bank payments, has failed miserably. Some of the people got a check, Some of them got a frivolous filing penalty. Some of them got all kinds of stuff because they don't know what they're doing. And although some of their members got checks, most of them got frivolous filing penalties and were under the cosh. One of their people's come to us with a $450,000 tax bill because they tried to recoup their bank payments. Because the way that Simon Goldberg and there was another group called MFPFS that was doing this, fundamentally don't understand how the system works. And are going to get people into a lot of trouble.
I think
We've not had filing penalty because we're doing it correctly.
I think it's fair to say that we've been on a learning curve at Matrix Freedom over the last couple of years as well, because
Absolutely.
There's been a load of roadblocks, hasn't there? And then more recently, you've found, hopefully, the golden bullet that allows everything to go through smoothly.
I mean, the truth of it is, I didn't know all this. You don't just wake up in the morning and know all this stuff, right? This is an evolutionary journey. This is learning from mistakes. This is having the intention and the drive and the passion. I do it 7 days a week. I'm going to solve this problem for everybody who wants the problem solved for. That is why I'm here. I don't care what people think. If they think I'm a fraudster, fine. That's your belief. I don't want to change your mind. I can tell you I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for others. I don't need to do this. I've been in exile for 2 years. I could have just disappeared and recouped my own credit. Why would I keep sticking my neck out? Because I'm here to serve others. And people can believe me or they can not believe me. I don't really care. Because those who believe in me actually do believe me when I say these things. Because they can see by my actions that I'm walking the walk. I'm not just saying all this shit and then doing something else. I'm walking the walk. And that's why those who believe in me, because I walk the walk. And I tell people the truth. And I tell people I've made mistakes. And I tell people that things didn't work out. And I justify why there are fees and donations involved. You cannot, and I want to clear this up, Mel, because a lot of people are completely confused by this, right? If you want to live in, a shack, a wooden shack somewhere on the side of a river and go and catch rabbits and live in the wilderness, and that's your idea of freedom, yeah, that's great, fantastic, go and do that. And I'm not here to say you shouldn't do that. Live in the forest, whatever you want to do. This is a free world, do whatever you want to do. But don't tell me that I can build the world's biggest freedom organization and not have any commerce coming in before we figured out how to do recoupment. How do I build an organization of that scale with no commerce coming in? I had to take donations and fees in. Because without that, I can't finance and build all this infrastructure. Because we've got a very big infrastructure. Yeah. It doesn't finance itself. These people aren't volunteers. They need to have a cash flow because they're in the matrix still. So how do you build something of that scale without having a fee coming in? Now, if it doesn't work out, I'll give you a credit note. Because my intention is for everybody to get 1 million times more back than they've put in. That's my intention. Has it worked? Not so far, but it will. And that's why so many people believe in me, because they believe that what I'm saying is truth, because it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been on a pendulum on my own journey. But I've always I've watched your webinars, I've been on the live ones, I've watched recording ones, I knew your story, and I always thought, to me, I've never met you in person, but to me, you sound authentic. I feel that authenticity. And I always have done, and I've got people around me and very close people around me that are like, nah, it's a load of bollocks. And I'm like, well, maybe one day you'll get proven right. Maybe one day I'll get proven right. Whatever, we are where we are. And you have to go with what's in And it, like you said, it's the right frequency, Ian. If it doesn't resonate, if it doesn't resonate for you, you are going to think it's a load of bollocks. If you're on a different frequency right now, then that's fine. It isn't for everybody, but it doesn't mean that you're not doing your very best to create something. Well, let's be honest. If it comes off as you expect it to, fucking amazing.
I mean, it's going to be unrivaled, and it's true freedom, because we're going to create all of our own infrastructure under our church for people to live free, that they want to move away from the chemtrails and the poisonous water and the poisonous food and all that. We're going to have solutions for all of that stuff. Energy, free water. We're going to have plasma for healing. We've already got that. I'm using it all the time. It's awesome. There's so many things that we'll be bringing to our membership. It's nothing to do with let's get rid of our council tax. That's fucking ridiculous, guys. I know it's a problem, but if you recoup your bank payments and your mortgages, why do you need to bother about shit like that? In all honesty, why? Think about it. Now, I'll leave you with this thought now, because I know we've been on a long time, right? The world that we're heading into is this digital concentration camp. A lot of people don't want to face reality. DARPA and other organizations have been working on enslaving our minds and our energies and harvesting our conscious energy through the nanobots, through everything. I'm not going to say all the words that will probably get your channel banned, but we all know that there's a control agenda out there. And for those who want to go and look into it, that is the real battlefield. It's the transhuman battlefield. It's the AI battlefield. We've got to have our own technology. So we'll be creating our own internet, our own communication system. You don't need satellites and 5G towers to have communications. Tesla was doing this 100 years ago. You don't need all that shit. That's all been put there to control us. You can create your own systems. If you've got enough people in a community, they can trade with each other, they can interact with each other. You don't need their system, and that's the big plan. You know, it's the freedom plan is about coming together as a worldwide community where we don't need the government systems. We don't need these systems which are enslaving all of us. We can operate independently of those systems, having recouped our credit and having now holding our credit in real assets, in trust, not the trust that a lot of people talk about that don't work, international trusts that are impenetrable, where you can control with fee simple, that's the true title of the asset, for the benefit of your family, whether it's land, whether it's property, whether it's gold, silver, art, whatever it is. You can operate all of that and take the true ownership of it in the trust, and then control it as a trustee and a beneficiary. You can have different positions in different trusts. That is what the super elite do. Just look at what they do. Do you think Zuckerberg has got a fucking mortgage? No. Do you think he's got land registered to the crown? No. Because these people are the elite. They know how the game works. We've got to play the game the way they play it. That's how we get freedom, when we create our own systems. And that's why I sit here 7 days a week and battle against the crown and battle against all sorts of challenges all the time, because that's my vision and we're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have belief and faith. Where we fall down is the constant corruption that you're up against, and that's what you're wading through like treacle, basically. So is it going to take another 3 months? You can't say. It could take another 3 bloody years. It depends on what shit you've got to go through. But I know you're closer now than you've ever been. So
no matter what the problem is, there's a solution. I don't care what the problem is. There's always a solution. It's like yin and yang. You can't have right without left. You can't have up without down. You can't have problems without solutions. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Before, I know you said we've been on a long time, we have, but before you go, just give us a brief summary of where you're at in terms of this 12-month sentence that has been issued in your absence. I know we haven't got into the detail of that, but it's the Financial Conduct Authority, isn't it, that have been gunning for you?
My dear friends, who've really been the spearhead for the Crown since 2009, when they, where they basically engineered the demise of my big financial services organisation and made me the scapegoat for, at the time, it was 400 million of assets that had been stolen by the bank. They made me the scapegoat for that. And then when I tried to take them on, they did a public censure. They bribed the liquidator to accept that it was my fault, which of course it wasn't. They bribed the liquidator. It's all in my documentary. And then basically over the next 10 years, everything I created was destroyed by them and their other actors in the Crown. Everything, you name it, they did it. The darkest, most devious tactics you've ever heard of were played out over the next 10 years, which is why people say, I don't know how you're still here. How have you endured all that? Because it's been a hell, I can tell you. But I've learned so much from it, and this is what gives me my strength. Because I don't care what they throw at me, there's always a solution, right? So I basically, where we are, to answer your question, is that they served a sentence which they can't actually serve. Because your audience probably should know that you don't have to accept service. Most people do without realizing that they're accepting service in the legal system. You can rescind service. So Ian Clifford stamp doesn't have any registered address anywhere in the United Kingdom incorporated. Ian Clifford stamp doesn't have any email address, and I've rescinded all service. So in the legislation, you can rescind service. And I've also stepped out of being the representative of the fraud, of the name fraud. So you can step out of the fraud, you can rescind the service, right? And then you go to the next level, which is Ian Clifford, the man, is the church envoy. And if you want to convict a church envoy who's committed no crime, because I'm a man, remember, I'm a church envoy, I'm not involved in any commerce, and their case against Ian Clifford stamp isn't even what people think it is. It's got nothing to do with fraud, which a lot of people talk about. It's got nothing to do with any deceptions or money laundering or all this bullshit that people talk about. No, they invented a speculation, this is the FCA, that Ian Clifford stamp may need a license to operate Matrix Freedom from them. May do. But we don't actually know, according to the FCA, so we need to investigate. Now, whilst they're investigating, they got a constraint order, what's called ex parte. So I had no knowledge of this at all. This is 2023, June of 2023. So this could happen to anybody, Mel. This is a really big wake-up call, really big warning. So they can go and get an order that constrains everything to do with the Ian Clifford stamp body corporate whilst they're investigating, yeah? Now, if you breach the order because you don't comply with it, because you can't, because it's impossible to comply with it, now they can convict the body corporate for contempt of the court order, which was their plan from day one. And this isn't a new plan. They tried this in 2017. I beat them in 2017 in the High Court when they tried something similar. And I was one step ahead of them and I beat them in the High Court, which they really didn't enjoy because they don't generally lose, right, these guys. So then what they did this time was they set it up, it's entrapment by design, and then they took away all the rights to serve any paperwork in the court system by issuing a civil constraint order in 2024. So now Ian Clifford stamp, the body corporate, can't serve any paperwork either as a claimant or a defendant in any court in the UK. Have you ever heard of that before? So have you ever interviewed anybody who is prohibited from serving documents on a court as a defendant. And people think we've got justice in this system.
Oh,
really?
I know we are. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's just an example of where there's no justice at all, right? So then, because they did that and they thought that was going to gag me and going to destroy my ability to defend, even though I'm not the body corporate, and I've been telling them for 2 years I'm not the body corporate, and they rig a judicial review, and then they give the guy who hands out a judicial review. Do you know what a judicial review is? It's a review of a decision in a court.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a judicial review that I did as a living man in 2024, and they got a guy called Justice Sweeting to railroad a decision without me even being in attendance, because I was going to do a pro se hearing as a man. And then they give the guy a knighthood. Now, do you know that knights are exempt from prosecution?
No.
Yeah, that's why they have knights. So you want to fuck people up really bad and then get a knighthood, you're now immune from prosecution, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so they did that, right? That's 2024. Civil constraint order, got a judicial review, rigged it, railroaded it, and then gave the guy a knighthood so I couldn't challenge him anywhere, any system in the Crown, right? So you can see what level they're playing at, right? Then they set it up so that the Ian Clifford stamp, the body corporate, is breached an order somewhere, so they say, but it isn't. They have got no evidence of this whatsoever. 500 witness statements from Matrix Freedom are served on the court to say that I've never offered any services that need a financial services license, and they ignore them all. And to get this one, Mel, and you're never going to hear this probably ever from any of the guests that you interview, the prosecutor from the FCA is an invention.
Yeah, I've seen it. So this prosecutor is Mr. Invisible. It just isn't.
It's a guy. It's a name called Alistair with a T, Mackenzie, who does not exist at the FCA. And I've challenged them to prove that this guy that they claim is the prosecutor for the Crown, this is the proceeds of crime, right? This is serious shit. Because if I need a license, which I don't, then if I take any fees, which I don't, because I don't take any fees, by the way, but if I did, if I was doing what they speculate that I may be doing, then all of those fees are proceeds of crime and money laundering, which you can now invoke international restraints through Interpol and things like this, right? So you see, they invent a prosecute. They don't have a case, but they get an order so that they can investigate. That's the strategy, and they've used it elsewhere. Look at Martin Armstrong, the forecaster. They jailed the guy for 12 years for contempt of a court order in a similar scenario. He was a hedge fund manager, Martin Armstrong, the forecaster. Get his story. There's a documentary about it. It's a really interesting documentary. It's exactly what they tried to do to me. Then you then say, well, is Southwark Crown Court an actual court? Where's the Crown agent? Have they got a Crown agent at Southwark Crown Court? Because in the Crown Agents Act of 1995, they're supposed to have a Crown agent. They don't have one. So it isn't even a court. And then you challenge the judge, who calls himself a judge. Where's your oath to the king? I want to see it. Because I'm just taking it on face value that you are a judge, but I want to see the proof. And they don't provide that either. And then I want a court of record. Because I don't want to be an administrative court. I want a court of record. Because I'm a man, yeah, and I've rescinded all this fraud. I'm not in there as a body corporate. I'm not even never been in there. I've never been in the room. I never would go in the room, right? So I send in an attorney in fact, not an attorney at law, very different. An attorney in fact on the private side of the ledger as a man. who is demanding my rights as a man for a court of record. This is not an administrative court. This is a court of record I want. And what do? They literally get 7 security guards to take my attorney, in fact, out of the room and throw him out of the courtroom.
Well, that sounds familiar. I've been there myself.
There you go. So that's, people think you can get justice in this fucked up system. When you try and get some justice by moving the court to a court of record, which is your right, and a trial by jury, not a jury trial, a trial by jury, they throw your representative out, which is a denial of a fair trial, yeah?
Yeah.
So you haven't got a case, you haven't got a prosecutor, you may not have a court, and you may not have a judge. And then they hand a sentence down, and the first thing on the sentence says, and get this one, Mel, it says that Ian Clifford's stamp, the body corporate, has dissipated £320,000 worth of assets, which is impossible because all of the assets, and this is what Matrix Freedom members who come to my webinars realise, every single asset that we had was frozen in 2023. Everything. All the bank accounts, all the Ian Clifford stamp bank accounts, all the corporate accounts, everything. I woke up in the morning and we had no access to any bank account anywhere in the world. And yet we're still going. And all these people that paid prior to June 2023, you say, oh, well, I paid this money and Ian hasn't given me my remedy yet. Go and talk to the FCA because they froze your funds. And they're still here. And we're still bigger, way bigger than we were in 2023. Because I won't be beaten by these fraudsters and these demons. So what did I do? I went to Bali, then I came to North Cyprus because there's no extradition treaties, there's no cooperation, this is a safe haven. I created a church. I now take them on in the International Court for Human Rights because I have the right to do so as a church envoy. And I also take them on in the International Criminal Court, not the Crown, but the actual Attorney General, the head of the FCA, the judge, alleged judge, the clowns at the FCA who've been running this case, Simon Goldberg, who's been their media and propaganda agent for 4 years, Dan Needle, who's been doing it for 2 years. They're all named in my criminal case. You see it on my website. I make no secret of it. So now I'm on the attack because they pushed me this far. And if the International Criminal Court turns the case down, I've got 5 other venues to go to, Mel. I've published all of this yesterday in a memo. I can go to South Africa. I can go to Ireland. I can go in other countries and take out a case against them. I can do all sorts of things. This is going to sound really friggin' arrogant, right? But there's a scene in a movie where somebody very famous once said, they fucked with the wrong Marine. I'm never going to give up. There's always a solution. I've got thousands of people behind me. And I'm doing this to prove that you don't have to put up with this bullshit. Why? Because you are an expression of consciousness. You are the Almighty. And people have forgotten that. People think they're little me that needs to comply with this and that bullshit. No, you don't. If you know how the system works. Come from that source of endless power, that conscious energy that we've all got. If we ever do another show, Mel, I'll tell you about my regressions.
Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, God, Jesus, there's so much more. There's so much more.
Very, very spiritual.
There's so much more.
We've been on a lot of time. Call it a day, because I'm sure people are getting bored with me rambling on. So.
Yeah, I'm going to probably split this into 2 or 3, maybe. I don't know how long we have gone, but yeah. Well, Thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, I've heard quite a bit from your webinars and stuff. People that have watched this today might be the first time they've listened to you. Then there's going to be the dissenters, them that think you're a fraudster. And then there's going to be them that are sat on the fence. And then there's going to be them that have invested. Because I know some people that are in the Matrix Freedom and bought as well. So, but
We don't need everyone. We only need a tiny percentage for our community. So I don't mind if people say, okay, fine, I don't believe him, he's a fraudster. I don't mind, because that frequency that they're on, I don't want it in our organisation, quite frankly. I just don't. But what do we need that frequency for?
Yeah. So, well, thank you. It's been a long one, but it's been packed full of value, and actually packed full of constructive, handy hints, for want of a better phrase. I get a lot of comments on other podcasts saying, yeah, but we want it to be, they want to be spoon-fed, let's be honest, but we want, practical, how do I do it? What's the step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4? And I think throughout this conversation, you've interweaved that. More obviously in some parts than others, but I think people will go away from this conversation going, well, A, bloody hell, but B, they can actually start to do stuff themselves, whether they ever decide to come to you and want to do something with you or donate any money to have some products or anything like that. I think people can actually go away from this conversation and start doing things themselves anyway. I don't mean go and take on the IRS, but, I mean, other things. So
one of the things I realised, Mel, is that, and I realised this from my financial services days, I had thousands and thousands of customers back in the day, and they basically want you to do it for them. Basically, bottom line. You can give people courses, you can ask people to read stuff and fill in these forms and send them off. And some people do it, and many of them don't get it right, and then they get themselves into deep water. What people want is a facilitated journey that they control. And that's what we do at Matrix Freedom. We don't just say, here's a course, pay us a few grand, good luck with it. And if you have a problem, don't worry about calling us because we're not going to answer the phone. No, we don't do that. We facilitate everything for the members. But they're in charge because they have to sign off on every step of the process. And that's how we do it. The member is coming into a private members organisation, also into the church. They're in control. They're waiving statutory protection. It's another thing that the FCA's fucked up sentence completely ignores, that everybody in Matrix Freedom is not in their jurisdiction. We're in a private members jurisdiction. And they've all waived statutory protection. So there's nothing in their case. There's zero substance in their case. Zero. But they don't need any substance, do they? Because what they want is what they got. And what the members can take away from this, and what the audience can take away from this, is that if they really want to put a sentence on you, it doesn't matter what you do or you say, they're going to do it. Because they're not doing it on you, they're doing it on their body corporate, and you need to know how to navigate around that. Because you're not going to beat them by telling them that this is unfair, or it's unjust, or it's unreasonable, or you're going to bring in the highest paid barrister in the whole world who's going to get you off. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
But there are things that do work, and that's what I've discovered along the journey, and that's really the energy I want to. If there's one thing that I'd love people to take away from this show, Mel, and we really have to go, is that they don't have to be afraid. Because fear is what they're using to control everyone. You don't have to be afraid, because there's always a remedy. Always. No matter how dark it is, even if you're on death's door, there's a remedy.
Yeah.
Always.
Agreed. Before you go, Ian, if people want to know more, where's the best place for them to go?
Well, we've got Matrix Freedom website. There's a very simple website. We don't say too much on there. We've got Republic of Old Souls, again, very simple website. We've got ianclifford.com if people want to interview me, for example, because I'm very interested to talk about, what we've been discussing and other things as well. And they can come through there. If they fill in a form, they get invited to our private members platform. It's free. There's huge amounts of information, all for free. They can come on all my webinars. There's no cost. Nobody has to pay anything for all the information. And a lot of people have said that the information I deliver is, for them, it's next level. That's what a lot of people say. It's what a lot of people feedback. You don't have to do anything. You can just come on all the webinars if you want, for free.
Yeah, and I think I'm right in saying this. If people are interested that have watched this, and obviously you're a subscriber of mine, I can organise private workshops directly with Matrix Freedom. I'd
love to do a webinar for your audience. You pick a subject. If it's mortgages, if it's infinite money, if it's sovereign, being a sovereign under the church and being really true sovereign, not this bullshit sovereign that people talk about, but true church envoy sovereign, international law protected, with United States diplomatic passport.
Nice.
Because you're a church envoy.
Yeah.
And that's allowed and permitted under the Article 1 of the United States Constitution. Yeah? Would you like a United States diplomatic passport? I think most people would say yes.
Absolutely, especially with the bullshit you have to go through at the airports these days.
There you go. So we can do a webinar on any of those three. I don't want to do webinars. There's 20 webinars we could do, but I want to do one on mortgages, void, discharge, recoup. I want to do one on infinite money, because that's really the big solutions. And I want to do one on how do you step out of this legal bullshit system and step into the world of the church envoy and all the protections that brings you, as well as being the executor, the general executor of the decedent estate, and separate yourself from that fraud. That's a whole webinar I do on that.
Yeah. I think that one would be huge, as well as the infinite money, of course. Well, all of them, but yeah. Okay, right. We're going to go now.
We'll set it up, and I'm here. I'm available. So
amazing. Well, thank you again, Ian. Huge value, and definitely going to get you on again.
My pleasure. Thanks, Mel.